puta. Porra. Cadê a merda do negocinho aqui? Ah, caralho. Aí. Agora foi. Let's do this. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. My name is Mateus. I'm gonna do a small presentation in the next slide. And the topic that I wanna talk about is the honest software, like designing apps truthfully for users. Because all tech events that we see and meetups and so on, mostly of the presentations are really deep into tech and code and so on. And I decided to change a little bit and bring a little bit of psychology to the tech part and bring some experiences that I passed through or I saw some use cases on the internet and bring here for you guys. I hope you enjoy. Well, basically, who I am, who am I? My name is Mateus Rocha. I'm a senior front-end developer at Liminal. I work with Luis. My hobbies are music, guitar, skateboard, and CrossFit. That's if you're probably gonna see me doing one of these things during the weekends or weekdays too. I don't know. And I have more than a decade in experience with software developer. I've been back-end developer, then I moved to front-end. I did a little bit of DevOps, QA, and so on. And now I'm more focused on the front-end side. It's the place that I like most because it's closest to the user. Basically, the agenda is I'm gonna do a small introduction of what is this honest software concept. Then we're gonna pass by the psychology of feedback with humans, what the honest software means exactly, and the good practice. It's a word that we use a lot in software development, but it's more good practice of honesty. And when developers break this honesty, what happened, the cause, the consequences, and so on. And the reward when we do that, when we do the honest development, and some final thoughts, and of course, a QA. So the everyday life, that's one of the first things that we have to talk about. How many of you already develop a software, or already use the software, and when you click, you always question like, did it work? Something happened? Did the form submit? Did the action worked? Many times. And how do you feel when this happens?
Something's broken.
Something's broken, that's the first thing that you think, right? Anything else? As a user now. Frustration, yeah. Basically, that's the first answer that everybody does. So here comes the problem with that. Bad feedback or missing feedback triggers stress in humans. And we always have this mentality of, oh, our users doesn't know how to use the software. Users always break the things. Sometimes we are users too. And not just with softwares, with anything. And we kind of get frustrated with that. So basically what happened is this. Everybody says that our users are impatient. They are not impatient, they are anxious. It's a big difference. Like, if you see a user impatient, they are not in control. They don't want to waste time. The anxious one is like, I'm not in control of that. And the human brain triggers this as a alert mode. It happens with animals, humans, they all enter in this alert mode. That's what the anxiety comes from. And when this happens, the brain hates ambiguity. When the brain is out of control of the things, and you enter in this alert mode, this ambiguity thing, you're always like, okay, what should I do now? And you start to get, and then triggers the stress, and so on. So we have these emotions behind the UX situations. Like, if you have a long loading without anything else, just a spinner there, you start to be like, okay, it's wasting time. But if you put a progress bar showing results, you kind of accept that. You start to accept wasting a little bit of time waiting for something. A good example of that is in the 90s, when we have the dial-up connection, everybody passed through this. You were downloading your game or music long time ago, and you always put the mouse in the progress bar to see, is it passing or not? You had the patience to wait for that. Imagine that instead of having that progress bar in the 90s with the old internet, slowly, you would just have a spinner there for 30 minutes, whatever. You'd go crazy. You'd never accept that. So for every UX bad behavior, you have a solution that will solve the emotion that your user are having in that moment. And each one of these like brings something like loading activity, lack of control, triggers anxiety. What you put, progress bar. If you have something like empty result for me is the best chance that you have to give a good feedback. Instead of putting an empty result like, oh, nothing here, you put a CTA there. Like you can put an action trigger there, like you don't have funds, add more funds. You don't have any result in this page, add, with this filter, try this other filter, and so on. Okay, it doesn't pass, good, but it will. And there comes the key psychology of these concepts. Basically, like, on each part of this, we're gonna address one issue or another. Anyone knows about what is the Zeigarnik effect? Okay. The Zeigarnik effect was created by a Russian psychologist called Bluma Zeigarnik. She's a woman. And what she found out is that in the coffee shop, the waitress always remember who didn't pay yet, but they always forget who already paid. Because our head don't like incomplete tasks. We keep this in our head. So we're always gonna remember, it's normal like for us as developers, like, oh, I remember I'm still working on this and that. You say that in the daily, but it's normal like when you complete everything and then you go the other day, like what you did in the day yesterday, you're like, you know what, I don't remember. I need to check. Because that's how our brain works. If it's complete, done, whatever. It's like a queue. So one good example of this Zeigarnik effect of tasks incomplete are form submissions that doesn't give any feedback or anything to the user. I love cars, and there's a really funny story about Audi in Brazil. Basically, a guy arrived to Audi and he was fan of the Avengers, multimillionaire, he wanted to buy a Audi R8 like the Iron Man car in the movie. Big issue, he wanted manual shift. They don't produce the R8 with manual shift. But he said to the seller, like, but mine needs to be manual. In Audi website, the internal website, they can order everything like this color, this seat, and manual gear. He did this, press confirm. No feedback, no loading, nothing happened. He's like, fuck, it's broke. Press again, press again, press again, press. In one moment appear, success. The form was submitted and so on. He's like, okay, you're gonna have your car. Problem, 15 Audi R8 with manual gear arrived in Brazil. Solution for that, marketing. They said, okay, we don't produce this car with manual gear. We're gonna number, it's gonna be a special series. So you have 15 cars, numbers from 1 to 15, Audi R8s in Brazil. That could be solved easily with a feedback, disabling a button, showing a form message of success or error. This was the Zeigarnik effect. A task was not done, the guy got stressed and start frustrated and start to press, and you have at least almost $15 million problem to solve. Unfinished tasks cause tensions. The perceived control. Our brain, since we lived in a society and so on, our brain needs to have control of everything. If you're not in control, we go crazy. One good example is, imagine that every day you go to the supermarket that you always went to do your groceries, and every day they change the place of everything. Today the milk is here, tomorrow you need to find out where the milk is, the next day it's another place. You wouldn't work properly in this place. You would be frustrated, stressed, you're gonna lose your time, and then you got crazy. Because it's a survival instinct of the humans. Like, if I'm not in control, some shit can happen. This is something that we always have to keep in mind when we develop some software for the user. That's why it's so important. Clear message, feedback, toast messages, or anything related to it. You need to communicate to the user that what is happening, so he knows that I'm in control. I'm uploading files. You need to know, okay, I'm uploading 1 to 10, 2 of 10, 3 of 10. This will give them this notion of, okay, something has happened. Oh, cool, nice, it's processing. Cool, it's okay. And of course, giving options to the user too. He can stop the action that is happening, right? So even fake progress reduce stress. And this is something that is already confirmed by studies. Like, it's doing nothing, it's just passing by, and then out of suddenly just jump a little bit more and go on, gives less stress to the user than spinners. It makes the user not click around instead of you just having a spinner that loading. The feedback loops. Feedback loops is, imagine that your software is always communicating with your user. You're always having a talk. And it's really, really weird if in the middle of a talk with someone, you just stop. Like, you're talking, you make a question and the answer never comes. Or in the middle of the conversation, the person just gets stressed and look around, and you're just like there standing with a weird face, like, what's going on here? It's the same thing with the users. You need to give feedback of everything that your user is doing in your app or in your software or anything related to it, and needs to be clear. This will give back the control to the user. It's a communication. For example, we are living in the era of the AI. Everything is triggered and so on, and AI is around. And you have chatbots, and you have Claude, you have ChatGPT, and so on. One of the things that, if you get all of them, the user interface is kind of similar. It's input text, and then you're going to receive a stream of messages. They didn't need this stream of messages. You could make the request, put there a thinking or any other word that they invented there, and then gives you all the result in once. But it gives a human touch, the idea of streaming the message. It's like someone is typing to you. This is the feedback that they put to bring a little bit of humanity in their app, and became a pattern. All AI agents use this right now. And for us, it's okay. We just get frustrated when our tokens end, but it is what it is. And of course, trust and predictability. Constant patterns reduce anxiety. If you have a button, if you have a screen in your app, and you always have the confirmation button in the bottom right and the cancel right on the side, don't change the positions of that. Your user already got used to this. That's why sometimes when designers come and say, okay, let's change everything in the app. For us, developers, is like, fuck, more work. Backend doesn't give a shit. Not my circles, not my monkey. Front-end guys, do whatever you have to do. But it's not just, for us as developers in the front-end side, it's like, okay, a lot of work. But for the user that is using, and there's something that is never communicated to the user. You never say, oh, we're going to start email or newsletter, like, soon we're gonna have a new design or something. The end of the day, he finishes his job. Next day, he opens the computer, everything changed. Position of the things and so on. So patterns are really good because, again, it triggers the control. Imagine that for all your buttons were confirm buttons, it's on the bottom right, and the next screen, it's on top right. In the other screen, it's, I don't know, left. Your users start to go crazy and start to get lost and start to have to click around. This is not good. And of course, colors. The pattern of colors needs to be the same. If your confirmation button is a blue, and if your cancel button is a ghost gray, keep this pattern. I only see people keeping this kind of pattern when it's like a destructive thing that can happen, like delete something, so on. Oh, it's red, always red. The rest, whatever, can be any shit. So this is another problem that we need to tackle. So basically, the definition is honesty UI is not about perfection. It's about communication. Like, honest software tells the truth about what's happening, even when truth is slow, broken, or empty. The user will trust more on your app, even if you say something went wrong, than if you don't say anything. So there's these 5 dimensions of honesty in the honest development. Time, how long is it gonna take? Like I said, the upload message. Uploading file 2 of 5, upload 2 of 6, doesn't matter. Estimating wasting time, ETA is important. Skeletons with context, doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense for you to put a skeleton there as a loading, and when the content runs, it's completely different from what the skeleton was supposed to show. If it's a skeleton, it needs to be at least in the shape of something that's gonna appear. The other thing is results, like clear communicate outcomes. Did it work? Yes, no, show. Was it saved? Show there. File was saved. Email was deleted. Filter was saved or something like that. Why is nothing here? Communicate. Don't show there empty, no data. No, you don't have data for this kind of filter. You don't have data because you didn't add funds. You didn't have data because you didn't select your favorites. You didn't make a bookmark or things like that. Error messages. Your user has no idea what 500 internal server error is. Not even you. Only if you debug. If someone just popped, imagine the support ticket arrived for you. I'm having 500 in this page. First thing you ask, there's something else more in the console? Even you don't know, so please communicate. Like, explain what happened, avoid blaming, and maybe there's a chance of you to put an action for that. Try again. Try to go back to the page before. Go back to page. Give it some notion for the user to get out of this dead road that he entered by accident, or not, of course. Progress. Show the system moving forward. Correct skeletons, correct loadings, step indicators. Imagine that you have a huge form that you broke into many steps, and you don't have the steps count on the side or on the top or nothing like that. The user just plain next, more form, next, more form, next, more form. If he get into page 2, you're lucky. You're lucky because I would never do that. Nobody does that. If you have a huge form and you have no indication where your users are, he will never gonna fulfill this form. And I have a really good example of that. And in Brazil, I worked at a website called Jus Brasil. It's the biggest law website in the world. And there were 2 designers there. And we had a form for people to put some, how can I say, some law doubt that they have. Law is complex, not everyone knows. So they could put there any question about any process they have on trial or so on. And this went to the lawyers, and some of them can answer and maybe get the case and get money with that. So each of the designers made a page. One, the design was not that pretty. It was more assertive, but not pretty at all. It was ugly. It was ugly. It was ugly. The other one was amazing. Design was good. It was using the design sister, had more things to fulfill the form and so on. And then we decided to do an A/B test. First day, the ugly design was like horrible results. It was like 80% for the good results of people fulfilling everything, and 20% for the ugly one. And we start to make a bet in the office. Like, oh, let's do this, blah, 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 blah. On Friday, it was 90% for the ugliest one and 10% for the other one. And we couldn't understand, like, the other one is so ugly, but it was assertive. It has less steps. The questions that they made was perfect. The answer that was arriving to the lawyers and they answered the clients, it was even more clear. So it doesn't matter if you have a beautiful thing, if you don't have steps or indication or be assertive, forget it. It's not gonna work out. And of course, honest about the context. Help the user to understand what is happening. Like a clear navigation, breadcrumbs, consistent UI patterns, predictable behavior. That's important too. And inform them. Informative labels, tooltips. All that is important for the user. Even if you can do at least 3 of these, you're already doing a great result for the users. If you get 5, that's perfect. Quick examples. No data, wrong. No files yet. Upload your first one. Spinner forever. Uploading 3 megabytes of 10. Even though the user has no idea, if it's your grandma that doesn't have no idea what megabyte is, she knows that, okay, I'm in 3 to 10. I'm close to the end. Or not. No, you're not close. Something went wrong. We lost connection. Try again. All that are messages that are really important. Loading feedback. This will not gonna kill if you just type a little bit more of strings. Disable this button. If it's saving, show that it's saving. It's gonna look ugly, yes. You can do something better, yes. But this is already enough. You're communicating to the user what's going on, and it's just 3 lines of code. Empty states, no collections, no content available when you're offline. Your wallet is empty. Oh. The image is bad. It's like you're skipping your shipping is just empty. Try it again. Enable your location. I can't show the map. Enable your location. There's an action button for that. Your cart is empty. Add something. Error states, please don't do that, please. Don't put, the hamster is cool, it's cute. Yeah, it's give human touch. No, it doesn't. I'm gonna be pissed because I don't know what 500 is. I know, but we already had talked about it. Oops, something went wrong. What? Oh, we can't find the page you're looking for. 404, we know that. Oops, there seems to be a problem with your internet connection. Okay, maybe I don't have any more data. Maybe I don't have Wi-Fi connection anymore. Tell the user what's going on. We can be honest and kind at the same time. It's not that being honest, you need to be like rough or anything. Like errors are part of real life. You will never have a software that doesn't have bugs, doesn't show errors or anything like that. We are humans, we're gonna make mistakes. Skeletons that show the same shape of what you're expecting to. This is important. Oh, skeletons are really cool. Yes, they are, if you use it correctly. If you don't do it, it's gonna be horrible. And transitions of page too is important. Since we have the 5 points of the honest software, we have the Hall of Shame. Fake instant loaders. People sometimes do that, a lot. Let's put instant loader there and then we just show the results and everything will be fine. Like fake progress bars. Progress bars are fine, but not the one that starts in 5% and jump to 100. If you want to lie Like correctly, come on. Make them believe, like skeletons stay forever. Horrible. Instant loading, screens with no real feedback. Like you just press something and then the whole screen goes white and then appears something. That's horrible. Something went wrong. This we should banish for any software development. Nothing is something was wrong. No, what happened, this happened, what I can do, and if the problem is temporary, show it's temporary, try again later or something like that. Lost connection, your session expired, please try again. Anything like that will help. Silent form submission. 50 million, 15 R8s with manual gear. Don't do that. Feedback for the disabling buttons if there's missing some important required field. Loading states, like you have some combo boxes that need to load the data async. So display some loading, success confirmation, error confirmation, validations. Make it clear, concise, small, nothing big messages or anything like that. All of this is important for your user, the communication with them. Empty catch blocks. If you're lying to your user, the empty catch blocks is lying to yourself. I already saw things like that, like catch error, nothing happens there, no sentry, no nothing. This will destroy your life. Like this will make everything harder for you to fix, and your user will be even more pissed because he doesn't know if something went successfully or some error app happened, and he's gonna keep clicking and maybe say to someone like, hey, don't use this app. I tried to do this and that, and that never works. It never works. And one important thing is no ARIA Live. Accessibility is feedback. Not everyone can use the computer the same way as the majority does. So accessibility and feedbacks on accessibility are important for screen readers and so on. So we have to think about them too. So what honest software gives back for us? Builds trust with the user, reduce support tickets, thank God, increase user satisfaction, makes developers proud. Because if you develop an app that everybody uses and everybody is happy with it, and you don't have to waste your time with support tickets to try to fix a lot of shit, you're gonna have a nice beer in the end of the day, like job done. A good example is in Brazil. I'm from Bahia and I lived in Salvador, and we developed an app there that was called Siga Meu Trio. So you have the big truck with the artist playing, and you have the circuit of the carnival on it, but of course the schedule is not so precise. It's impossible. It's like 4 million people on the street. Everything is chaotic and so on. And sometimes you just want to see one or another artist. This app became like the most used app in Salvador during the carnival because everybody found out that it worked. So they just downloaded and it's like, oh, I want to see Ivete Sangalo. So they follow and bookmark the trucks that they want to see of the artist. And they know where it was, when it was going to leave, if it stopped somewhere, if there is some delay or anything like that. So the whole communication that was before never existed in the carnival, you just went there and by luck, find the artist that you were expecting during a time frame, became more precise and so on. So this creates trust. And I think until I left Salvador almost 8 years ago, I think they still use it because my cousin always goes to the carnival and posts the group chat about everything, and he was still using the app. So the final thought is, honest software is not perfect. It's human. It communicates like a good friend, open, honest, and kind. Remember that if you don't do that, you're going to trigger a lot of emotions in your user. And emotions is something that can break the whole relationship that you have with your user. And like, keep in mind that add feedback, add empathy, be honest, And every button, every state, every animation, every feedback, every message is a chance to build trust with your user. If your competitor is not doing that and you do, it works. Right now, if we think about AI and everything, we're almost reaching the ceiling of the things. Like you have a better model here, a better model there, then every week someone releases a new model that's better and better and better. But the user interface and the interaction is almost the same every time. From my point of view, who is gonna win this battle or this war is who will have the best UI UX with the user. Anti-gravity, for example, when it was released for the first time, I started to use it. Everybody was like, what do you think? And I said, their UX and UI is really good when the AI made the plan and I give the correct feedback for the things. Instead of just showing in a chat, hey, I need an answer for this, this, and that. In the plan, you could see the question, and there is an input text for you to answer the things. That's what Cursor is doing right now. That's what Claude Code is doing right now. So this fight can decide who will be the next Microsoft or Apple of AI. UI and UX is the answer for that. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, now it's the time. Vai tomando. Brincadeira.
Do you think using optimistic updates in some parts of a website is a good or bad practice?
If it's a short thing, like quick things, like a like button, for example, it's not so harmful if it fails and didn't give the right feedback when the user refreshed. They're like, oh, I really like this, why is it not working? Because it's not something like, for example, a comment that you make in a post. In my opinion, the comments, they should not be optimistic. It's not about time. It's like I said, like your user is not impatient. He's just anxious. If you give them control of what is happening, you can wait 1 second for your comment to be processed and appear on the screen. Doesn't need to be like, I click and that's it. Like we use the internet for so long and it's never that fast. Sometimes it's kind of fucked up. Like you wait for a YouTube video to load a little bit more and you watch it. Or you wait when Netflix is loading, you know.
But nowadays I think the users are more impatient.
That's Gen Z.
Not anxious.
And that's Gen Z. No, I believe that if it's a small thing, it's okay. I don't see something so harmful for it. But if it's something bigger, I don't like it. I never liked it. Any question?
I have another question. It's the first time I hear this term, honest software. Did you create it or?
Yeah, I created.
Wow, that's so cool.
Created. I had this idea of bringing this like psychology to tech because of what I said in the beginning. When we go to meetups of tech, we always go to deep down and console and code and so on, and we forget that we are all humans.
Nowadays it's only AI.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's everything about AI, and I was like, I don't want to talk about AI. I want to bring a little bit of humanity to the thing, because in the end, we develop software for ourselves, you know, and it's important for us to have a better communication with the user. Sometimes we have bad communication between each other just talking, or in different language. For example, English is not my native language, and I can say something that means other thing, and you know, can be bad or something like that. But if you keep the honest with your user, that's a good point for you to make. We always have this kind of examples of apps that are not so good, but people like, you know, but I kind of, it's nice. Oh, but the other app has this feature, and you're like, yeah, but this one works. Usually when they say this one works, it's not that the other one doesn't work. It's the other one doesn't communicate exactly what's going on. Maybe the other one works perfectly as the other one, but it doesn't communicate. For example, I remember when Snapchat was released. I was already using Instagram. Everybody was using Instagram. I tried to use Snapchat, and in the end, I was like, I think I'm getting old because I couldn't do anything in Snapchat because the user interface was really confused, and it doesn't communicate anything that was happening that I gave up. So that's it. You go.
When developing a web app or a website, as you said, it's good to communicate with the user, but how to find the right balance to not over-communicate? Because sometimes not having a feedback, it's bad, but having too much feedback is also bad.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sometimes when using a website or web app, I get this stack of toasts that I cannot read everything.
Mm-hmm.
It gets me frustrated as
Yes.
well. So how to, and I believe all those messages are important and they mean something there, but how to find the right balance so we don't over communicate with
the user.
And so it's not, we provide some feedback, but not too much feedback.
Mm-hmm. Usually what happens is the user is doing something and there's a flow, and you have like, inside this flow, you have some steps. If you break these flows in size or steps that are kind of in the same context or have things in common, that's a good moment for you to group this in just one message, short and assertive. Maximum short title and one line of description. You don't need more than this because the user is already reading a lot of things in your screen. And if you put a big text there, I don't know about you guys, I hate reading. I really hate. Since I was a kid, I hate. Sometimes I don't play I love video games. Sometimes I don't play some games because there's a lot of things to read. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do this shit forever. So I just give up.
The Gen Z, this is the most Gen Z thing.
No, I hate reading. That's different. I hate reading. They don't have patience. I just don't like to read. But basically, it's like that. You need to find the balance in the flow of the thing. So when you build the software, it's not about the communication and the screen and so on. The whole thing lives in the same environment, and you have to find a balance of all that in just one place. For example, if you have a multi-step form, for example, the things that are in control in group one and go to the next screen, all that needs to be in, the feedback needs to be in just one message or something like that. Like your form was submitted, we're gonna take care of your request or anything like this. Notifications need to be small. If you see right now, if you get the social media in the beginning and now, the notifications are super short now. Before, if you went to Facebook, like it was the text of the title of the group, this person made a comment in the blah, 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 blah. It's just like the title, a comment was made by this person, that's it, done. You have another question?
I find it pretty interesting that you don't like to read while your job is software engineer.
Yes.
So you spend all your day reading.
Exactly. And now even worse, because now with AI, I have to read the plan. I have to read before the pull request is made what the AI did. Yes, it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, my worst nightmare became my life now.
Jokes aside, the thing I wanted to
Oh, sorry.
ask you, no, sorry, a real question about that is AI is changing a lot of things. From the demos I saw, AI is changing UI UX.
Yes.
So how does your fundamentals apply to the new prompt AI UX? Because when I saw OpenAI presenting anything, they say like, hey, you can book hotels using ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And the UI they presented was like very bare bones. Like you have like a small picture of the hotel, a small description. Doesn't give me any appetite for it.
To use it.
Yeah, exactly. So, do you feel like your fundamentals will apply the same way to that future, because, or at least some kind of future?
I believe yes, because in the end, the AI user are still humans. We still need this. The same way that it didn't triggers you to use it and do the things, it will be even worse if it doesn't follow anything of this. So I think since this is always human to human in the end, you have the AI in the middle, but it's always us with someone else. You have a question?
So, I have a question. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Regarding these guidelines, I have been also a designer before. Now I'm a front-end. I basically been a front-end for almost my whole career. And this resembles me a lot of the design guidelines, the UX guidelines itself. And so, for example, in our team, I work with Gabriel in the Körber design system. The designers are the ones who define these design decisions. And the way that you present, it seems that you have the power of these decisions. And my question is, how do you deal with this? Who is the responsibility? At the end, you define your UX?
Me as a front end, I always try to work close as possible to the designer. And if I see that something could be improved, I always try to suggest something for them. That is the same thing with communication. Like, I know that the designer has the knowledge of many things that I don't, but doesn't mean that maybe he forgot something or something is missing, or maybe you as a developer had an experience a little bit similar before and brought, hey, in another moment we did something like this and it didn't work out because of this and that. And it's the same vice versa. Like, we can implement a UX and maybe it's not the way the designer was thinking about, and maybe after it was developed, the designer said, no, I don't think it was really good. Let's try to change that. And this involves the PO too sometimes. And I remember that once I worked at a German company here, and they are really straightforward. And the PO decided for something, and when I was implementing, the design was already there, but when I was implementing, I was like, I don't know, it's a lot of blocks for the user. It needs to do, this could be simpler, like in small, the flow should be small. So I talked with other designer from the team, that was the lead designer, and her name was Nicole, and I was like, Nicole, I'm thinking about this, this, and that, but I think, remember when they did this, what do you think if we do this, this, and that? She's like, that's a good step, but we can do even better with this, this. And I was like, okay, that's good, I like it. And she was like, okay, who did this? And I was like, Malti, the PO that suggested this for us. So you need to convince him now, Nicole, because you know how Malti is. Malti was really straightforward. She said, oh, I will convince him. 5 minutes later, she said, okay, you can implement it. And I was like, oh my God, how do you did this? She said, I talked to him and said, this is shit. We should do this. And I was like, okay, cool. If it works, it works. But yeah, it's
collaboration.
It's collaboration. It's always collaboration.
Yeah, thanks.
And I have one thing to say about this. I think one of the roles of front-end engineering is go and say to your design this doesn't work. I think I think you should expect that as an engineer normally, because the design he will be thinking a lot of things, and of course he will have a better overview of user
the data
behavior.
Flow.
Yeah, but sometimes you have more context in how everything works, the back end, what you have, what data you have, what context you have. I think that's important to give the input to the design. But I want I didn't want to talk about AI, but I have a hyper focus about that, so that's fine. You said a question about how it is reading now, and I want to have your input here. What do you think? I think that, for example, for AI, for software engineers are arriving in a moment that we're using, because we have tools, everything. Who's not using is falling behind.
Yeah.
But I think that the AI will need to the next boom, for not engineers or something. I think the next step is the UI. I think
Yes.
we need to evolve the UI somehow around it, and I think it's a little bit about what you say. I think that we didn't arrive there yet, but what do you think about it? You think it's going to be a big shift, or
I hope it will be a big shift, because right now it works because it's the most simple way of communication. It's reading and writing. Now we have the talking too, of course, and so on. But for me, the high level would be like Jarvis from Iron Man. That's like big shit. Jarvis, I need my coffee done that time, need to do this, go do that, pick up my Amazon package in this place, check if this is happening, blah, 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 and Jarvis does everything and just came with the results for you physically or anything like that. But jokes apart, if we reach this level, it would be perfect. But yes, it needs to evolve more for the non-tech user to use it. It still needs that.
When our parents want to use it, that reaches the point where everyone
Exactly.
will use it.
I have this mentality. It's like if I don't have it here anymore. That's sad. If my grandma can use it, anyone can use it. That's the idea.
AI will never be something. So
Yes, exactly. My grandma can't use it anymore.
The other day I saw someone promoting on LinkedIn a job titled design engineer, and that caught my attention. I was like,
Yeah.
interesting. I opened the job description and it was there. In our company, we are merging what most people usually title as a UI UX designer with the front-end developer. And I'd like to see your opinion about this. Are you seeing this as well? Like, do you think that this is a natural evolution of the front-end job?
I think it's too much information for just one position. Like we spent at least me, I spent 4 years in the university learning data structure, algorithm, and so on. A designer will study a lot of things too about behavior, design itself, art, and so on. Like, I think people try to combine too many things, and everybody will start to become a duck if you go like that. It can fly, it can walk, it can swim, but it will never do all three really well. It's too many things for one person.
yeah, my 2 cents on that is it depends on the company. For example, we have companies that they need a lot the UI UX thing. You know, for example, I think the most famous example is Amazon or any web platform that wants to sell things to a real person. I think a UI UX thing is very important, and even before AI we had positions that are a mix of both things. Now with AI we have, I think, two worlds. The companies always are planning to reduce headcounts and cut jobs, you know. So now with AI we have two places: a company that wants to kill the developer and put that responsibility on the UI UX, and I see that on companies that, you know, need to convince the user to buy something or to use the app. And in the other side we have a company that has a good product, a valuable data, and so on and so forth, and they don't give a shit about UX AI and UX UI. So they just, you know, leave these to AI. Both are wrong, you know, but I think that's the situation right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. In our company, for example, we the UI UX, the product team are coding stuff, but not production stuff.
No.
I think that's the correct way of doing the things.
Yeah.
You know, and also we in the engineering side we are using AI to fast forward some product step that, to be honest, doesn't matter. You know, for example, in the back office we don't need some situations to a designer to make a design. So now with AI it's so much easier to, you know, fast forward this part of the process and get the shit done. You know? So
It's basically that. The back office in our company's example. Like it's used just internally by some of our colleagues. And of course, all the other part that it's user on the user, on the screen of the user, that thing will always go from PO developers and pass through design reviews and feedbacks and so on, and evolves until reach our side to develop.
So let's give another applause to Matheus.
Thank you. Tem que parar de compartilhar aqui, né?
Tira o microfone.
Vou não, vou ficar aqui.
I'm so sorry to stop the fun stuff, but we're gonna get back to that later, okay? And first, Mateus, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you. Because my presentation, the whole purpose of my presentation is to convince you guys, maybe yes or no, to use web components as the foundation of a design system. But if you don't actually believe that design systems are important, then it doesn't matter what I'm here saying or not. So Mateus' presentation is perfect because he basically explained why you need a design system, right? To give the user some feedback, to have accessibility, to understand, hey, you need to, yeah, I'm not gonna say exactly what he just said, but it's so good. Thank you so much, Mateus. So yeah, my name is Gabriel Carvalho. I'm a front-end developer at Körber, part of the Körber design system. One of my colleagues is here, Maria. And yeah, that's the whole purpose. I'm trying to show why web components is a good option if you're building a design system component library for your company, right? Okay, let's go here. So, why design systems, right? Good that Mateus answered this question for us. Consistency, speed, and quality. So if you are in a small business, like for example, I co-founded a startup some years ago, you care a lot about the speed, right? You want to develop as fast as possible. Consistency is something that you start worrying more once you start having a brand, because you want to offer a strong brand and make sure that people, every time they use your software, it needs to be consistent. And then you have the quality part, which comes a little bit later. You shouldn't, but it comes when you start becoming a business as big, for example, as Körber, right? Because it's no longer something that you can think, oh, it doesn't need to be accessible, it doesn't need to be secure, it doesn't need to be performatic. It's by law required. We have legislation and regulations saying your components, your applications in the European Union or in other places need to follow the specific set of rules. So that's why it's not even about why design systems, like you need to have one. You know, you're gonna have to implement one because the regulation says that you need to have something that delivers all of these three things, okay? So now let's start with, now that we understood why design systems, let's start with the problem. So you start in a company as a front-end developer or any application developer, and one project says, hey, I want to develop in React. The other one says, I want to develop in Vue. That's why I wanted to make sure to mention this use case, that in small companies, this is not very common. If you have a small project going on, you define your framework and that's it. It's one project. But once you scale your company, you're going to start having so many different frameworks and opinions. And that's where you have these fragmented design systems. Because one project is going to develop their own button, the other one is going to develop their own button, and even if you have that Figma source of truth, once you put them side by side, it's not going to be consistent, because it is what it is. Once you start implementing the specifications that you have on Figma, you start having questions. But what happened if this? What happened with the active state? Oh, what is an active state? And in the accessibility, what happened in that? And then you start seeing different components being developed with the same source of truth. This happened in another company that I was working, that they had the design specs and they would put on top of Vuetify, which is a component library in Vue.js, right? And some other people they were using Angular, and they had Angular material, and they would apply the specifications of the kind of a design system on top of the Angular material and on top of the Vuetify. You'd look at both applications, they didn't look like the same company. Because you have the limitation of how much you can customize those components, right? So that's the purpose here of why, in my opinion, once you start scaling as a business, that you have multiple projects working in different frameworks, the best solution, and I'm going to try to convince you guys here, is to develop this component UI library with web components. So why? Why they fit here so well? they are framework agnostic. The same component that daytime picker, let's start with a simple one, button, right? Let's start with a simple one, a button. The same component works across every single technology. This is super important. Like, for example, in our business here in Körber, we have people using .NET. We have we have all the frameworks that you can imagine, you know, in web frameworks that you can imagine, like people using Java web views, Vue, React, Next, everything. And because it's a 15,000 people company, you're gonna have a lot of different frameworks, right? So you need to be framework agnostic. Style encapsulation. Wow, this is, in my opinion, the shadow DOM. This is a term that when people hear for the first time, they think I'm creating a new term, but it is an official term of the web component standard of the web, the shadow DOM. And it enforces your design decisions. So that's why web components are such a good fit for design system component libraries. Let's start with the basic thing, a background pic, no, border radius, right? You get into a design system and you don't like the border radius, it's too squared. You wanna change the corner. You go and change the border radius directly in line with the class. In a web component, this doesn't work because the design system of the company said, no, 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 no. In our design system here, we have square corners. And if you wanna change, you need to talk to us. Yeah, it might be you as a front-end developer, you can be a little bit frustrated with that, and at first, you might not understand, like, why? I like rounded edges, but to be honest, you are that one single person. How about you start thinking from the whole business perspective? You know, there are hundreds of people thinking about how to build a consistent brand here to sell this business to become one of the biggest business in the world. So you cannot just change the rounded corners because you think it's better. You know, there's a strategy behind all of that. Native standard. Wow, this is important. The browser uses web components as a native standard. It's not something that my cousin created an open source library and he can leave any moment and boom, you're off. You need to use the second thing. No, this is now implemented as a native standard of the web. When you use web components, any place that runs HTML, of course, you need to check on the compatibility when they started accepting the web components API. But for now, last time I checked on the can I use, it's 98% since for the last 6 years. So almost every browser on Earth renders web components. There are some gotchas. The lessons learned of my title of my applications in the end, we're going to see some gotchas that some areas web components don't work really well. Like I'm going to just say server-side rendering in some situations they don't work really well. But anyway, why is this so important? In the other job that I was doing, we were using Vuetify, like I said. And then the Vue changed to Vue 3. And we said, oh, I want to use the latest tech. I'm just going to update to Vue 3. No one even asked, hey guys, Vuetify works in Vue 3? And it didn't work for an year. The open source community of Vuetify took 1 year to update the version of the Vue inside of the framework. And we couldn't stop our product for 1 year until Vuetify stopped because we wanted to use Vue 3. So instead, we went to Tailwind CSS and started building our own components from scratch, but using Tailwind CSS. But this is an important topic. If you use web components, you are backed by a native standards. And the native standards mean that they don't change overnight. They are stable throughout the years. You have that very important saying in the web, like you say, don't break the web, right? Everything you do in a web application or in a new API, you cannot break what came before you. It should keep working, old websites. Okay, cool. So slots, interoperability. Slots are basically what we have in React, props, right? So you can create components that allow you to create a composition of something. So imagine like a card component, and you have a slot for the image. You have a slot for the first title. So web components have all of this ability, all this API to build the same way that you build your components using React, Vue, you can build using web components. So real world examples here. Don't just trust me, right? You have here some very important businesses building their design system in using web components. I'm just going to share here this one. Okay, cool. This is a very nice website that they have. It's basically like a place where people share the design systems, and you can go here and filter by web components. And then you're going to see Red Hat, Cisco, Porsche, IBM. So we know that we are in company with the biggest people out there, right? So it's something that Google, with the latest material design, they are also developing the version of this. The same way that you have the design specs, they are also developing the code implemented in web components. Okay, cool. So let's go back here. Nice. Now we are getting a little bit more technical here. What are web components from a tech perspective, from an API perspective, right? From the browser. When you say web components, this is just the marketing name of the standard. You actually have 3 different technologies in the browser. You have custom elements, Shadow DOM, and HTML templates. And the best way to show this is to show some code here. Let's go there. So I have here this Gabriel's multi-select, which is a multi-select component that I created with my own name. And that answers the first question. What is a custom element? It's an HTML tag that you can put whatever name you want. I call it my name, Gabriel's multi-select. If you check on the DOM, you will see that this is an actual HTML tag, Gabriel's multi-select, with ID, name, required placeholder, like any other HTML tag. So this is the first thing. But let's go here to the second part, which is the Shadow DOM. So the first one, custom elements. Define your own HTML tags. Shadow DOM. Oh my God. The Shadow DOM. Why is so important? Remember that thing that I said about the background color, the border radius. The Shadow DOM encapsulates from the global CSS. So even if you have a global CSS saying, I want border radius of that, I want a background color of that, whatever, CSS parts here and there, the Shadow DOM says, no, nothing of this touches me. The DOM inside of the shadow root, and it's very interesting because now, if you didn't know this, if you open an HTML tag and you see this thing, shadow root, everything that it's under here, it's the Shadow DOM. That's why they call it the Shadow DOM. You have the light DOM, right? It's in the light, it's the default DOM. And you have the shadow root, that it's the entrance to the Shadow DOM, and everything that it's inside of here, it's encapsulated. The global CSS has no power here. So, going back here, HTML templates. The templates here is just because I'm explaining the technical part, but the template is like Vue.js and Angular. You have a part which is the template, you have the logic, and you have the styles. So the Web Components API also offers this idea. You have a place where you define the template of the HTML, a place where you define the logic of that component. I'm going to show you next, which is the life cycle of a web component. And you have a place where you can add the styles. So basically, it's very similar if you ever worked with Vue.js, like a single file component kind of approach. If you want to check every single thing about the API. So before we go back to the code, let me just focus here on the other important things. How they are built. The code that I'm going to show here, it's built in vanilla everything. Vanilla JavaScript, vanilla, there's no SCSS, there's no TypeScript. But we all know that we can build more and be more productive once we start using, for example, TypeScript in some cases. You have some kind of bundling and everything. So you have lit, stencil, and fast, which are the 3 I would say most famous frameworks that will help you build web components in scale, right? If you're building for a big company, you're gonna need reactivity instead of implement your own reactivity. Lit has some kind of interesting decorators in TypeScript that does like that that basically reduces the boilerplate of you writing in vanilla JavaScript. We use Lit, and maybe you're asking now, Where is the Körber design system? The thing is, we are protected by intellectual property, so there's nothing I can share here. That's why I implemented this using only open source, sharing the code I implemented on my private computer. I remember once we got a project that it was like a consultancy, and for them to have access to our source code, we had to call some lawyers. So imagine me sharing here the source code, that would be bad. Yes, we had to literally call a lawyer to say, hey, is it okay for us? And the guy said, no, don't give access to the documentation. Just send the binary, the zip of the NPM package so they install locally the NPM package. They cannot even do the NPM install. I was like, okay. So I'm not going to commit the same mistake here. So everything that I'm sharing with you, it's very similar to what we do inside of Körber. In the Körber design system, we use Lit as our framework, which allows us to develop web components in TypeScript. But you also have other options. You have Stencil, which was created by Ionic. You have Fast, which is basically, they wanted to compete with Lit, which is the Google solution here, okay?
Is that the Ionic, that old Ionic that started with?
Yes, it's that old Ionic. They still exist, and they are super big in this world of web components because they implemented their own library that you show a web component, but once you open that in Android and iOS, it looks native. Yeah. It's not native, but it looks native. So what they did is, in the Shadow DOM, they implemented their own native stuff that happens behind the hood, but for you, as a user, as a front-end developer, you're just seeing the HTML tags. And then once you open on Android, on iOS, it has different styles. So it's super cool. Okay, nice. So this is just kind of a review, me trying to see if I convinced you or not. So the encapsulation works with web components. The CSS specificity are effectively eliminated, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, I'm going to create a design library here, a UI component library, and then they're going to put in their application, and the global CSS of that application is going to break my components. You don't need to worry about that anymore because you have encapsulation enforced by the Shadow DOM. You have cross-framework reuse. Remember, like now we are talking about Next React. If we come back here in 2 years, we are going to be probably talking about different technologies. And you don't want to be rebuilding your UI component library every time someone comes up with a better framework. You want to have a source of truth, a real source of truth. So composition primitives. So slots provide the best composition primitive. There's a gotcha here because I'm going to leave that for then. Simple distribution. Since it's native to the app, to the web, right? It's as simple as just creating the script that creates that custom element, attaches and you put on your browser, and it works because the browser understands that's not something created by React, by Next. Any browser on Earth that has the compatibility will understand what is that component is going to load. So imagine all the amazing components that you have built as a front-end developer, like a daytime picker, like one that compares A and B or something like that. Like all this, you could have developed that in native technology and just import that into any Angular, Vue.js, React application you want, instead of just depending on that framework. Yeah, cool. So the gotchas, right? So in server side, these are the parts of the lessons learned, right? So now server side rendering is back again on the hype, right? And of course, you have these use cases that are very important and very good for server-side rendering. But web components, they don't work really well for example, each framework will have a different way to handle web components. So that's the problem in server-side rendering. In the client side, it's native. It's by default. Everything works the same. As soon as you enter the server-side rendering world, you have their own implementations on how they will handle the web component, and it's not standard yet. So this is a problem. You're going to have to, for a Next.js application, you're going to have to do some changes in your source code. For another Next, for whatever other server-side framework, you're going to have to change the source code to adapt to web components. And I understand that this is not cool, right? So I just wanted to make sure that you know that before you take this decision of converting to web components. Now, the second important part, composition versus configuration. This is so many discussions between the developers and the designers of our team, because let's say you have the card component, right? You have the card component, and you want to, for example, an image on the top, a primary button, or a second, or a title. If you open your card component as a composition approach, they could probably move the things around there and say, hey, I want an image here and the button on the top, the primary click on the top. So then you have the two problems. You want to enforce a design system. You want to enforce the best practices. But on the other hand, you don't want to be so strict because like there are some different use cases. So how do you find the balance here? I wouldn't say this is only a problem for web components. This is also a problem for any other framework. But in web components, because you have the shadow DOM, if you implement as a configuration approach, which is saying, hey, I have a title, I have an image place, you cannot change. It's blocked. It's encapsulated by the shadow DOM. There is nothing the front-end developer can hack, get into and change the position. So with the shadow DOM, you can actually enforce a design decision. And the front-end developer of any application in your 10,000 people in your company cannot break that. So that's very bad or a good thing. It's a lesson, right? So let me just share here another thing. One of the first things that I thought when I saw web components was like, is it actually accessible? You know, like how are the semantic HTML, the ARIA labels on something that doesn't look native? It looks like it's breaking. The truth is, the web standards thought about that. So they implemented an API to make sure that the web components can be truly accessible. And a good way to show that is you have governments building their design system using web components. So the New York State uses web components on their design system. If you go here and inspect this, for example, you will see that this has a New York State hyphen shadow DOM. So yeah, they could have called Gabriel's button or New York State. And yeah, this is so you have here the three things. You have the custom element, the shadow DOM, and whatever you see here is part of the template system. And you can see from this comment on the DOM that they used lit as well, like us. So I would say that lit is the leading framework to be used, like when you want to build with web components now. So let me just quickly share here on the code. For example, in this application here, this example, let me here. Cool. I'm not sure if you know that this is how multi-select looks on the native web. If you go to MDN and you say multi-select, and then you go to the multiple, this is how a multi-select looks when you have no extra styles. So this is the experience that you want to offer to your users? I don't think so, right? So that's why most of the multi-selects that you see on the web are not native, because this is the prettiest that you can make a multi-select. It looks like a list, and it's not very clear that you can multi-select, how to multi-select, but this is a native multi-select that works in the browser. And this is the Gabriel's multi-select, right? So this is the web component that I created here. And the interesting thing is, if you go here and do a quick check on the Lighthouse, for example, I know that this is just a demonstration, but it's good to show. I should have just checked the accessibility, but you see here that the accessibility is 100%. And the performance as well and everything. So basically, the web components, if you implement it well, of course, it's gonna be pair on pair with the native components, right? But of course, the experience is totally different. So this is just a very interesting case that you have here a web component, for example, inside of a form tag that once you do the submit, it gets the data. So wow, So the form even realizes that this Gabriel's multi-select is a form element. So you see, the web gave us all the API we need to implement web components as accessible, as effective as any other native component. And yeah, I have here the code, but honestly, now after this presentation, I think this is going to be too heavy. So this is just the code for that component there. Let me check here, show the outline, so you guys see a little bit. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is too heavy for now. But anyway, this is the code in JavaScript, in vanilla JavaScript for that native, for the custom, for the Gabriel's web component. This is funny. This is what defines the custom element. This is a JavaScript API of the browser, right? Custom elements.define, and I called here the name of that HTML tag. And let's keep in touch. That's it. Yeah. If you wanna add. Whoa, it's hot. So questions?
I have two actually. So my first one, I love design systems. I'm a father of a design system in our company.
Wow.
I built it from scratch. And
Abandoned the child.
what?
He abandoned the child.
You abandoned the.
Kinda.
Oh my God.
And we only have React in there, so I made it with React and I made it as simple as I could. But like back in time, like in 2019, I worked on a company that we faced this problem. We had like a lot of front ends. We had a platform that was built on micro front ends, like
Okay.
weird stuff, and we had this problem that we had like 4 or 5 design system libraries, and then we wanted to make a single one. And in that time we've choose Stencil because Lit and Fast doesn't exist, and Stencil was the best. And also Stencil in that time had the React syntax sugar. It's not the same, but it was pretty similar.
Cool.
But we faced a lot of problems with the events API and some browser interaction. So my first question is, how is that today? How these new frameworks are dealing with the interaction between the actual framework like React, Vue, and Angular, because all of them have different ways of manage the events and the browser API.
Okay.
And my second question is, how in Körber, if you could share, of course, you guys deal with this dilemma between flexibility and keep
The Shadow DOM in, yeah.
Shadow DOM stuff.
Cool. Thank you for your question. Let me just share a very custom elements. I think it's everywhere. Let me just, this one. This website is really good because it shows all the frameworks. They have basically they're running tests, right? End-to-end tests on how each framework handles web components. And React, until version 18, was horrible. Until very recent, right? 1 year ago, React, you had to, instead of just attaching on click, you'd have to go to get a reference to that and add an event listener to the web component, which is crazy for a React developer to do that. So
I remember that we've created for React specifically. In that time, we had like AngularJS, Vue, and React on the platform. In React, we had to create custom events to.
Yes. So this is no longer an issue if you're using React 19, okay? From a browser perspective, the web component is like any other native HTML. And you can fire, dispatch an event like any other native component will do. So the button fires a click event. You can create your own Gabriel's click event. And actually, that's very common in most of the design system libraries. They do a prefix of the event. Instead of just calling on click, they call New York system, NYS click, Gabriel's click. And so the best way to know is go to a website like this, or you can find other places, and see how each framework handles web components. Most of the frameworks, the famous ones, are like almost 100%, right? And they handle, the way you use is different. So for example, in React, for you to attach an event listener, you always need to start with the own. So even if you call your event click, you need to write own click, because that's how React developers are used to. But in Vue.js, no. In Vue.js, it works more like, you see here, to access like a property, you need to do this .prop, because if you don't put this .prop, you're accessing the attribute of your element. So this is also very interesting. Once you start working with web components, you must understand how the web works. There is no other way, not how React works, how the web works. So a very important question that I'm going to be honest. 4 years ago, if you'd ask me, what is the difference between an attribute and a property of a native HTML DOM? I wouldn't be able to give you a good answer. I would say, do you mean the React props? No, I mean, forget React. How does the web handle an attribute and a property of an element? And you need to understand the difference if you're going to build a web component. But anyway, your second question was in Körber how we handle that. We have realized one thing. If it's a long list, if something that is going to loop through a list, like for example, a table or a step or something like this, something that the user, we put as a configuration. So we put like data as a property, data, and send us the list. And we handle the whole list rendering for you if it's a lot of data. And we're going to implement the whole logic inside. But if it's a component, for example, let's say, like a select, we can also implement the options on the item. Honestly, it depends on how much we want to enforce. We don't have a very specific policy on this. We had a lot of fights about this, but because most developers, they want to override the default and say, hey, I have a specific use case here that you guys need to accept. You know, you guys need to accept this is what I need, and then you say, but the design system doesn't support that, you know. So we have to. It's a hard question. That's why I put on the gotcha. We are learning day by day. I honestly don't have a good answer for this. Yeah.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
Of our experience. Also, designers tend to not make it so flexible because they want people to follow their guidelines. You see.
Yeah.
And then this is some more fire to the wood.
Yes. Yeah, those designers, you know.
No. But it gets even more complicated. So we have this discussion inside the dev team,
Yeah.
and then we have even the designers saying, oh, but this shouldn't happen. And our saying is we need the other people to have more flexibility and freedom.
Yeah.
If they opt to develop in a way, it's their responsibility at the end.
Yeah. So it's really hard. Like you go through the components that people built, and you see that it's not a common pattern. Each one will implement if it's composition or configuration, and it depends on how much they want to enforce that style.
It's basically like it creates a little bit like the mentality that the car companies and manufacturers does with creating the DNA of the thing. Like probably if someone sees any app with the design system from Körber, they will identify, okay, this from Körber.
Exactly.
You see Ford has this mentality of the Ford DNA. You can see any car on the street, you probably don't know which car it is, but if you look and say, that's a Ford, or that's a Chevrolet, and so on.
Yeah, but I have like a different approach. I think like it's when we talk about what we want like as a design system. I think like the designers, they should say like we want this, and they do the rules. But when you create like a design system that you don't have like a little bit flexibility, right, for your team, because I get like today my current work, basically we have this like we have like and that's a question that I will have later. But we have, for example, you can pass like the CSS if you want, because sometimes we will need, like if you want like to give the flexibility and evolve for user experiences that it's like always evolve. Because imagine if I always like close my properties and say like it's going to be like that. When we have like something new, I believe that it needs to go to your team. Your team needs to develop it. And so, for example, I think you lose like a little bit of flexibility of teams being involved in your design system. And this is other problem about government of code. And for example, today where I work with Robinhood, it's a little bit like that. So we have like the design system is closed, but if I need something, I will go talk with the design system team. We're going to do together. They will review my diff, and that's it. So that's what I believe that is like how it should be, but depends on how is your company's structure, right?
Yep.
But my question is, when you have, for example, React, for example, I'm using like Tailwind, and this is it's like a really question out because I don't know. So I'm using like Tailwind, and I want to pass like a little bit of a custom CSS, like a border radius a little bit more.
Yeah, perfect.
I need like to put like CSS, or I can do what
Nice.
I can do.
It's perfect because I was about to share this. Like in this Gabriel's multi-select that I created here. So the first thing that is going to happen once you implement the Shadow DOM is you don't want to be so strict. You want to offer some API, a little bit of change on the things that you can compromise, right? So as a design system team, you say, no, it's okay. I might give access to a specific element, a DOM part of my component, and you can access that. But you cannot access just using normal JavaScript. You need to define an API on the web component. And for that, you have two technologies. You have the CSS custom property. So it's very common, like everywhere now you're using design tokens. You see this hyphen. This is a CSS custom property that you can use inside of your component, and they can define on the global CSS. So for example, here, I define the Gabriel multi-select background. And if I go here and I add as a red, I can override that. But if I would go and just put as a background color and put yellow, the corners here, you are seeing a little bit of the yellow because I have bought a radius, so a little bit of that corner went, but you didn't override the main component, right? And if you would go here to the other one, to the native one, the background color would override the whole thing. So you have CSS custom property, and you have the one that you were asking, which is the CSS part. Let me just show here. Where is the code? Okay. So here, perfect. Here. Everything that you see here is using the API of the web component, so you can customize how is the Shadow DOM. So you have CSS custom properties. They are variables. They are CSS variables, right? And you have the CSS part. You define this as an attribute. I'm going to show on the HTML. But you can say, hey, I want to access this specific part inside of the web component, and this gives you access to that div, to that whatever element inside of the Shadow DOM. And you can do whatever here. Then this is a lot of flexibility. So in our design system, what we say is, this is what we approve. You can change things here. It's okay. This is what you give you if you come asking us like hidden, you know, like, hey, I need this for our project. It's something like this. We don't want people to have access to the internal parts of our component because they can go here and do whatever to this element. So let's find the chip element there on the chip. Let's just search for part. It's maybe easier. Oh my God, so many parts. Yeah, but it's somewhere here as an attribute. Yes. So, any other questions?
What does it export at when you're using web component inside like your React application?
Okay.
Is the web component like an iframe, like it has its own CSS, HTML, and JavaScript?
It is. It is. If you see this code here, you will see that, let me just fold this. So we see fold. You have the template, then you have here, which is the classes with the whole life cycle hooks and the methods of your component. And here in the beginning, you also have the static styles here that I define here in the HTML. So you have, basically, it's very similar to how you see on a view single file component, right? You have the template, the styles, and the logic, the script. So that's how you define a web component. And the interesting part is this is all encapsulated into one single file in this JavaScript file. So when you go, I have here no bundler, no special framework. I just go here to the index.html and I use the Gabriel's multi-select, and it works. There's no special framework here.
So you include the script on your
Here, on the header.
and
Yeah,
then you can
it's globally available. As soon as this line of code, you don't have that import component on the top. No, it's globally available as any other HTML element. So as soon as you run basically this code here, as soon as this code runs, custom elements.define, you put the name of the HTML tag, you put the class that defines the whole component, which extends, you can see this class inherits what is an HTML element. So you have, the web offers you, hey, I know what is an HTML element. An HTML element has the name, has a required, has some properties. And then you extend that thing and that class, and you can implement your own HTML element.
Okay, so if you're like using React and you want to import like just one component out of the design system, you wouldn't do that. You would like put the script tag on your React project and then you can use that.
Yeah, it depends on how you want to distribute. In the corporate design system, we have the lazy loading approach and the bundled approach. So you can have a script that imports all the components right away, or you can import in the entrance, in the root of your application, just some specific components. But the thing is, after you run that script in the, let's call it the main TS of your application, right, in the root, you don't need to keep importing that same file inside of other files, because that becomes available as a native, almost as a native HTML. It's an HTML tag that works across the entire browser. So you just need to import the script once, usually in the root of your application.
Have you seen how it works in terms of like linting and type checking? In terms of like, if you have a React project and you import this, your custom web component, can you see off their properties?
It depends. It doesn't work by default. Like you just create here, for example, a JS file, and then your React will know the properties with the IntelliSense of TypeScript. No, it doesn't work like by default. So you will have for each specific scenario, for example, in TypeScript, IntelliSense, you can deploy together with your JavaScript kind of a map file of the TypeScript, of the JavaScript. And that's why Lit is so cool. Lit does that for you. So once you implement your web component and you export, you do the build, you can see there's a DTS file that describes your component in TypeScript, and then any IDE will have IntelliSense. Say, hey, this component has these properties, these are the types, but it doesn't work by default. You need to have a framework.
Yeah, that's what the framework does.
Yes, that's what the framework does. So by default, it doesn't, it's one of the things that the framework does.
As you said, like you can import everything and put it there and everything will be available. How can you handle, for example, imagine that one of your components, maybe the button of custom select, just fail in some action that the user does. It will break the entire web page, or I can like contain the error in just one piece and all the rest works, like error boundaries we have in React.
From the application perspective, every time you declare the HTML tag is a new instance. So you import once. Basically, once you import here in your main.ts, you are telling the browser, hey, There's a custom element in the area here. Every time you put that in the DOM, it's an entire new instance that it's totally unrelated to the other. So it's going to be handled as a button. If you don't like, just because you're using several buttons, they're not connected, right? Each time you write a button on the template, the browser creates an instance of a button for you. So it's the same thing for a web component.
So it encapsulated by itself, even there.
Yes. So even though the description comes from one single script, it's just the blueprint, right? It's just saying, hey, browser, every time you see someone typing Gabriel's multi-select, here is how you should render this, and this is where you should get the logic. But then it creates a new instance. And something very funny, that's what the browser does, like under the hood for every component. So they have their shadow DOM, but they just don't show us. They have their own logic. So a button is very simple, but if you get the daytime picker, right, that you click and it shows a pop-up, that is happening in their own shadow DOM. It's not exposed to us.
Yeah, let's give another.
Oh, thank you. I'm just gonna sit here.
Okay. People, I don't want to gatekeep everyone from the next. So very quick, thanks a lot for coming and for joining us and for this good question. And again, thank you Matheus and Gabriel for this amazing talks. Very, very good. And last but not least, thanks Körber for having us. I hope we could do more of these things here. They were very, very good with us, and that's it. Thanks. Let's eat the rest. Não, preciso passar o. Minha gota. Não meti.
Está lá no direct. Está lá o vídeo.
É, não meti, mano. Eu já.
Mas eu encontrei lá no direct.
Mas que.
Tens que fazer. Porque eu calhei no direct, assim por acaso. Estava à procura de vídeos e tipo no YouTube estava a mostrar todas as opções. Depois vi lá o direct e pensei que tinha.